Today on Hearts of Heroes.
The crane worker was 150 feet out on the jib.
First responders have to act quickly to rescue an injured construction worker 150 feet in the air.
There was no way that he was going to get down there under his own power.
We know just extricating that person is going to be very difficult.
It was pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie, it was intense.
Plus, from the clouds to caverns, rescuers dropped 40 feet below ground to save a man.
There was a worker that had fallen into a hole and had injured himself.
It was a ticking clock for us to race to get him out.
Heroes like these are never afraid to reach new heights to rescue those in peril.
High-rise construction is a challenging and often dangerous job. When an emergency happens several stories up, first responders face a uniquely complex and daunting task.
Hundreds of feet above the street, one injured high-rise worker would need to rely on both the crew and brave firefighters to try and get him to safety.
White Plains, New York is a bustling and ever-expanding suburb of the Big Apple.
White Plains is a city about 30 miles north of Midtown Manhattan. We have a nighttime population of residents, about 65, 75,000 people. And during the day, it balloons up to about 200, 250,000.
Of course, a rapidly growing city means lots and lots and lots of building.
In the last 10, 15 years, White Plains has really exploded with construction. The high-rises are going up. We have the highest concentration of high-rises in Westchester County.
There's cranes all over the city, and that's kind of how we anticipated that a crane rescue might be a potential one day.
We've seen an explosion of cranes in the city where high-angle rescue could happen at any moment.
And the White Plains Fire Department prepares for exactly this kind of event. While these types of rescues aren't common, they are complex and they require highly specialized training.
These are called low-frequency, high-risk events.
It will not happen a lot, but the consequences of not doing it right are tremendous. So that's why you have to train constantly for that event.
A large part of that training is in high-angle rope rescues. It's not only the fire department that goes through rigorous preparation. The Emergency Services Unit of the White Plains Police Department also gets rope rescue training.
I'm currently employed with the City of White Plains Police Department, assigned to the Emergency Service Unit. The purpose of ESU is to assist in situations that a normal cop may not be able to handle.
On a warm August afternoon, first responders would put this crucial training into action. That day, a construction crew was working on a high-rise crane, multiple stories in the air.
The crane worker was approximately 150 feet out on the jib. He was working with 3 of his co-workers. The trolley shifted and caught the worker's leg between the steel on the jib and the trolley itself.
And he suffered a compound fracture of the lower leg.
The crew got the man off the jib and onto a safe platform, but he was severely injured and needed immediate medical attention.
Fortunately, members of the crane crew had been trained in emergency first aid.
They splinted his leg so it wouldn't move.
They even went as far as they packaged his leg using duct tape and threaded rod.
But they knew that their colleague needed to get to a hospital, and fast. Coming up.
We know extricating that person is going to be very difficult.
We knew it was time to step up and react.
But first, the summer heat can be intense, posing challenges not just for brave rescuers, but for all of us. Here's a valuable tip on how you can stay cool and safe in the relentless heat.
There's nothing more comfortable than an air-conditioned room to beat the brutal summer heat. But air conditioners, if not maintained or used safely, can pose hidden fire dangers.
If you have an AC window unit, there are a few things you can do to help stay safe. 1, if you must use an extension cord, be sure it's properly rated, heavy duty, and grounded. 2, make sure your air filter is always clean and dust-free. And finally, if your unit is 15 years or older, you might consider replacing it.
A few simple tips that'll help you beat the heat while staying cautious and cool.
After After injuring his leg 150 feet above the ground, a construction worker was in desperate need of rescue.
I was working here at Station 6 when the call came in, and immediately I knew something was up. Just the tone of the dispatcher's voice told me that this was something unusual.
The initial dispatch was worker hurt up in a tower crane 150 feet in the air, so we knew that it was go time in that regard. This is the culmination of all our efforts over the years, and we knew it was time to step up and react.
Within minutes, both the White Plains Fire Department and the Emergency Services Unit were right there. But they immediately encountered major obstacles.
The construction project took up an entire city block, making access to the victim extremely difficult.
The first thing was to access this victim up on top of the crane.
We knew we weren't going to get good intel, and we could actually get eyes on him and figure out what was going on.
Getting to the injured man would not be easy. They'd have to climb several stories of ladders, which are enclosed by a narrow and confining safety cage.
By no means is it wide access. The ladders have a cage around them, so it's really only shoulder width wide. So any equipment that you carry, you have to move your body to fit the equipment so that you can carry it up the ladder.
You need a lot of equipment, and it all needed to be up there. Make no mistake about it, you have to be in good shape to get yourself up there, because you still have work to do once you're there.
Once they were on top of the crane, the first priority was checking on his injuries.
I did a basic assessment. He was conscious and alert, and although he was in a lot of pain, he was a tough guy. We noticed his leg actually was duct taped with rebar. We decided to keep it on there just because of swelling and possible compound fracture that it could be underneath this duct tape.
Now they had to figure out how to get him down. They weighed their options.
The best case scenario would be we would assist him walking down the ladder. He had a compound fracture in his lower leg. That was not happening.
We thought about a Stokes basket, and it didn't work out because it was too difficult and too big to get through certain spots.
We could have helo lifted him out of there, but that seemed overly complicated. We train on these high angle rescues all the time, and a straight lower to the building under construction seemed the way to go.
Much, much easier, less complicated to put a harness on him and lower him down. That was going to be the easiest, safest, most efficient way to get him down.
This would take intricate rope rigging.
Anytime we build a high-angle rope rescue system, the first thing we start with is we look at anchors. The crane mast itself provided that anchoring option. So about 8 to 10 feet up, we anchored, we have clutches, and that controls the descent of the individual being lowered down.
But now there was another obstacle. They couldn't lower him directly to street level where the ambulance was waiting.
This was an active construction site. The base of the crane was about 30 to 40 feet below grade. We would have had to lower him all the way down to the ground and then transverse about 200 yards of an active construction site.
Instead, they would attach a line to a structure nearby, then utilize what's called a tower ladder bucket. That would get him down to the waiting ambulance.
The decision was made to lower him down onto the deck, get him into a Stokes basket, secured, get him on top of the bucket of the tower ladder, and down to the ground.
In the midst of all this chaos, they realized they were being filmed by news helicopters.
When I saw 3 or 4 helicopters up, I said, this might be a bigger story than just us in White Plains.
I had heard the helicopter kind of buzzing around, and I made an announcement to the guys. I'm like, guys, eyes are on us. You know, keep it tight.
We later found out that this was televised nationally live. I'm glad I didn't know that at the time. That would have made me a little bit more nervous.
Undeterred, they kept their focus and prepared the worker for the precarious journey.
We were putting him over the edge, and I told them point blank, I said, this is gonna hurt. It's not gonna be fun, but we're gonna get you down, and we're gonna get you down safe.
With that, they sent the man over the edge of the crane.
Once he was rigged, and I saw Lieutenant Eifler starting to make that edge transition, it was pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie, it was intense.
He gave a lot of waves to the crowd in the helicopter on the way down.
Once he got to that first roof, it was kind of a weight off my shoulders a little bit.
We lowered him right down into the Stokes basket, brought him over to the tower ladder where there were operators in the bucket waiting. Those operators then brought him down to the street, and we landed him right next to the ambulance.
The man was whisked away to the hospital. The high-risk operation went off without a hitch, and in no small part thanks to their dedication and hours of intense training.
I had never done anything even remotely close to that in my life. I knew it could work and I knew it would work, but there's still that feeling that this is the first time you've ever tried something like this.
You have to remind yourself that this is what you train for day in and day out. When it comes down to game time, this is the time where we have to react.
When the bell rings, these guys come together. You know, our firefighters come together, we get it done.
At the end of the day, that guy can now sit home with his family and we can go home to ours. If you don't get a tickle out of that, I don't know what would tickle you.
Coming up, the clock is ticking as an injured man is trapped 40 feet below ground.
So at that point, we've got to get moving. We've got to get on the road.
But first, a tip to keep your kids calm in case of an emergency.
Being caught in a house fire is terrifying for anyone. But for children, the sight of firefighters in full gear entering their home can be especially overwhelming.
It's important to teach your children about fire safety and let them know that we are here to help. Many departments offer fire station tours and safety programs where you can introduce your children to your local firefighters. They might even be able to wear a helmet and feel comfortable with our uniforms.
So stop by and say hello. And remember, firefighters are your neighborhood guardians. They're always ready to step in at any moment.
Navigating an intricate and high-stakes situation requires skill and bravery. When faced with a sudden crisis, the challenge can become exponentially more complex.
In such moments, those involved must depend on their team and the unwavering support of dedicated responders to overcome the obstacles and ensure a successful resolution.
Nicknamed the Heart of Texas, Waco lies about halfway between Austin and Dallas.
It's kind of an island. We're in between two large cities. We're kind of out here by ourselves. We're the biggest city within 90 miles of either direction.
Being the only hub for miles, Waco Fire Department has to be prepared for any emergency, including precision rescue operations.
These are our high-risk, low-frequency calls that are very important because for our safety and for the safety of the people, we need to be on top of our game. Because they are so technical, there are so many moving pieces, it's something that has to be trained every single day.
What makes us unique here in Waco is we go on a lot of different calls. We go on swift water calls, technical rescue calls, confined space, trench rescue, and we can respond to a multitude of calls.
Those calls can come from places miles beyond Waco's borders.
Our technical rescue team isn't just for the city of Waco. We serve 6 other counties in our area.
Given this critical responsibility, continuous training is essential. So, the department participates in a weekly training session called Technical Tuesday. And on one Tuesday afternoon in October of 2024, they were focused on confined space drills.
They just pulled the Skidco tripod off of our rescue. This is where we attach all of our mechanical advantages, what can be used to lower the rescuers down into the hole.
Typically, confined space areas don't have an area for us to tie off our rope systems. So we use a tripod to put it directly over the hole. It allows us to have a straight vertical pull out of a confined space.
As the team members continued their training, they had no way of knowing that later that afternoon, a city maintenance worker would urgently need precisely this type of rescue.
A water utilities worker was cleaning a tank 30 feet underground. When he lost his footing, he fell another 12 feet into a secondary tank.
Now he was hurt and trapped 40 feet below ground. His coworkers called 911.
At that point, and we start game planning, you couldn't ask for a better scenario of having our technical rescue team and guys that are off duty, that are on some of our reserve rigs out there training this exact scenario.
The best way I can describe it is it was a perfect storm. We had double the manpower that we normally would have.
At that point, the wheels start turning. Okay, if this is actually a confined space call, we've got to get moving. We've got to get on the road.
Coming up, firefighters spring into action and every second counts.
It was kind of a ticking clock for us to race against time to get them out there.
But first, No matter what the emergency, rescue workers are trained to recognize people in distress. But if you're ever caught in a desperate situation, there are things that you can do to make it easier for them to help you.
Being at home when a fire erupts can be terrifying, especially if you're trapped on the upper levels. When first responders approach a fire, it's important for them to know if someone is on the upper floors.
Here are a few ways that you can signal to let us know. Grab a flashlight and shine it through the window. Safely break the window. Or find a mirror and use it to reflect sunlight, creating a flashing effect that can be seen from the outside. Finally, wave a bright piece of fabric like a shirt or towel. This will make it easier for rescuers to spot you.
And it's always helpful to have whistles around the house for emergency signaling. By effectively using these signaling methods, you can greatly enhance your chances of being spotted and rescued. Stay smart, stay visible, and let your signals shine.
The Waco Fire Department rushed to the scene after a maintenance worker fell 45 feet into a water tank and got trapped.
We were preparing en route, getting harnesses and gear so that we could hit the ground running and not waste any valuable time. We arrived on scene and I was made the rescue supervisor. I started delegating out assignments to other members, kind of figuring out a plan of what we were going to do to get the member out safely.
They set up the tripod and rope rigging over the subterranean tank that the trapped victim had been cleaning.
Going into a confined space underground poses very specific challenges, as well as any number of dangers. These include slippery mud, razor-sharp rocks, and potential unsafe air.
Despite the risks to their own safety, rescuers needed to reach the man and see how badly he was injured.
They were complaining of lower back pain and some difficulty breathing, so we knew we had to work at a quick pace to get down and do a proper assessment of the patient and get some baseline vitals, and then we would execute our rescue from that point forward.
Firefighters Guerrero and Miller entered the hole and carefully made their way down to the victim.
This specific hole that we were in was probably about 6 feet in diameter. It had concrete impingements on it, which made it really hard to maneuver in there.
We're operating essentially right on top of each other, but also being delicate of his injuries and trying to move him as little as possible. And so we had to be precise with all of our actions that we conducted.
It made it very difficult to get to the patient, assess the patient, and then get him packaged up and out of that hole.
They gingerly placed a harness on the man and attached him to the rope line.
We have to be very precise as we lift the patient and ensuring that he's not moving around or swinging. We want to bring them up as straight as we can to make them come through that hole.
The worker was pulled to the surface and transferred to a waiting ambulance. The rescue team let out a cumulative sigh of relief.
There's obviously a level of excitement. This is what we've been training for. We've done what we've been training for. He was able to go home that day to his family.
There was a great outcome for it. It's really a testament to all the hard work that this team has put in to be one of the best trained teams around. I'm very proud of the guys, the job that they did that day, the work that they put in, not only on calls, but off duty and in training, and dedication is next to none.
It's kind of one of those moments where you put in a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of training, a lot of time, and you finally get to use that training. It's finally coming into place, and you do it well, and it's fruitful.
As you just saw, being a first responder is not for the faint of heart. One day you might be rushing into a burning building. The next, you're performing a rescue hundreds of feet in the air.
It's their fearless dedication and unwavering drive to help those in need that make our first responders truly extraordinary. We're glad you watched these heroic stories with us today. And be sure to tune in next time for more Hearts of Heroes.